Okay. And I was dealing with these, I think they were called ghostwriters or something, or some organization. And it turns out they were just total, they were just internet creeps, really, And everything I'd get back, I'd go like, what? And I finally just organized all the poems that I'm not going to release it. You guys are crazy. I have no idea whose apartment this is coming from in Thailand or whatever, But they did do some of the artwork, and so they got me a porcupine. I said I want a white porcupine. They were able to access that somewhere. And then this is a picture of me in the ocean. That's actually with my brother Bill's ashes at the Oceanside. And I think I mentioned Kuhn in this one. Yeah, we when I did my first compilation book, this book here, we read at Elliott Bay Books with my philosophy teacher, Graham Conroy, who was a phenomenologist and what they call a preliminist. He was actually, he's in the, if you look him up, like, you have different forms of philosophy, and his preliminarism is Graham Conroy's invention. So you probably wonder, what does that mean? You have to look it up, but he was quite bright. He was a great guy. So I was thinking when I was coming up here, I was thinking, there's just, like you said, there's so much dour information. It's so horrifying, So I thought, try to find things that won't bum everybody out, right? Because I could do this all. I could bum you out all afternoon. I got lots of bad poems, sad poems. So I love the summer. I love heat. I love when it's 100 degrees. I go out and ride my bike because I know nobody will be out there. When I was in Cabo St. Lucas, I was jogging on the marina. People are looking at me, what's wrong with this guy? I think if you've grown up where it was cold and you just didn't have great shoes and stuff, you just love the heat. I just love the heat. But then I was thinking, in my own little selfish mind, that you have to have rain. You got to have it. And so I wrote this poem called "I Will Forsake My Love of Sunshine for the Rivers I Cherish." Because I was looking at this river that was getting all dehydrated. I was thinking, stop it, Lou. Let them have some water. And this is what I wrote. This is, I will not complain this year that summer is ruined by fall. The jetty was dry in September where water should be. The gulls and geese land too far out proclaiming things aren't right. The wet sheen must touch the shore, wetting the waves like groom to bride. I am in the adoration of our sun's brilliant heat. But life will wither without a river to embrace. I will release seasonal depression for all the rivers winding through the towns and hills of summer. White liquid death consumes the blue repetition of saline evaporation. The summer sun will drop Inca halos on golden lockets of water gems. Light and rivers must never end, must never end. So this is one I can kind of get around the Grim Reaper concept that we're all talking about. But it's kind of, I don't know if it's an allegory, it could be, but it's the surreal bubble of safety we live in. When I don't know about you, when I'm watching the news, I'm going, how come I'm not getting hurt? You know what I mean? And what would it be like to have F-16s bomb the hell out of your town? And what would that be like? And what would that be like to see children get hurt the way they're being hurt? And so I wrote this, our surreal bubble of safety as the news tells of thousands dead. We drive our clown cars, the new tattoo generation of I'm not me. While across the world, legs and arms are blown apart, not Banksy art. Bomb-blackened children scream and cry, unlike our pity parade charade. I think of jealousy when I think of war, the unhappy rich coveting pure joy, the legions of blockers in my own life clawing and frothing to be the first in line, knocking down dreams to claim the higher ground of some importance. In our safety of nuclear dominance, warmed by hypocritical lodging, a noble savage decree did not save our indigenous tree of life. The best fantasy is to shelter in nothingness and wait for Jeopardy on TV. So, it's moving. I even put little, I've never been prepared for these, as you know, so look at this, I'm really doing it. I got I thought, come on, Lou, grow up. So this is June Leaves Danced Before Me. You published this for me in Breathe. And this was, every year, as you get older, and a lot of us are getting older, I go down to Willamette Park and I was thinking, wow, another chance to have a spring and a summer, and here comes summer, right? And so, strangely enough, I was sitting on this picnic table and I was looking at a couple leaves that were coming in, they were coming in, and I could tell that they were summer was calling, and it was a cool feeling. I thought, oh boy, it's coming, And this is called June Leaves Danced Before Me. And the time flew and danced in merriment like new June leaves. New summer, new river, glimmering starlight in the flowing aqua. Glowing, fragrant, lilting rosemary dew. Colors soon explode into view. I looked for the night, I waited for the stars, to hold life in a royal embrace. Where once a child grew, another child flew into lonely Caulfield revelations. Walking down Granddad's oaky Tex-Mex street past brown-skinned strangers, to hold love forever with perfumed eyes drunk on life's feathered apparitions. Hoping time would never end, running down fortune's lost-flowered highway. Catalina waits, a never-ending dream, an ocean island of warm benevolence, arrayed in the luxury of tender safety to revive freedom's dancing mirror. Dolphins race the sails in Pacific joy. Avalon glows, distant in cool serenity. Memories of Victoria, Nimes, Strasbourg, Luzerne, Paris, Santa Barbara, Athens. No one noticed when you go away, dreaming of sun and waltzing Manta-rays. Dancing and singing the crackerjack blues with nothing to do and nothing to lose. Heartbreak, fortune, and a gambling town where the mouse always wins. I had to get rid of that those cliches, I was gonna write when the house always wins, but I thought I'm gonna let the mouse win, Anybody ever break their leg?
A small bone.
Did you break your leg
My femur.
recently?
Yeah.
That's why you're on crutches?
Yeah.
Well, this is for you then.
Thank you.
What?
Thank you so much.
Well, when I was in Colorado, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was about 8 years old. I had really skinny legs, and we ran on this gravel road in Denver, Colorado, on Lamar Street by Colfax. If you've ever been to Denver, and it was there was an irrigation creek. It was this pretty amazing little scene. Little schoolhouse you walk to, apples and plums, crazy kids, chickens, And there was this tree across the street, and we put all this alfalfa in a pile. And my mother was kind of vacant. My dad was kind of out to lunch at that time in their lives, So my mother's just kind of like out of it, but I said, Mom, watch me jump from this tree. And I go, Superman to the rescue. And I jumped and I landed and I broke my leg in front of her because there was a rock underneath the alfalfa. And of course, if you ever broke a bone, it's 11 on the pain scale. It really hurts, especially when you're little. I didn't know what was going on. So here's my little story. The day I broke my leg, we piled alfalfa beneath the country path tree. The goal was to climb up to the tree and leap down. Our child-to-child frivolity in the long hours we played. Oh, my joy to yell to Mom and tell her to watch me play. She came impatiently stood to see me ready to fly. I yelled, Superman to the rescue, missed the green pile and hit rock. I cracked a bone and was carried to the car to get a cast on it. A needed life distraction, a wet plaster of Paris empathetic moment. Returning home to sit for weeks on our porch midsummer, new crutches under armpits, watching others run and play, I realized how blessed I was before they fall. Exiled to think. In a month, a filthy, dirty cast, 2 times re-whitened, then sawed off. Sharp pain, first steps to school, limped a year, tender mended. To run fast again, light as air, for 1,000 tennis shoe races. Child-free with years to petition life's blessed kindred, kinetic wisdom. So that's sort of, this is pretty good. That was good. We had the props going, yeah, nobody even knows you didn't really break your leg. It worked. I was looking to this one, Blue Be the Night. It's really weird. The publishing company I was in, they're just absolutely, everybody just wants their money back. And they're like, they sold it to somebody or something. And it's pretty scoundrels, Yeah. But they did a good job. And I was during the pandemic when they published me, and they thought I was somebody, so they didn't charge me very much. Gave me a hybrid, but they just been, if you look up on their site now, it's like they got rid of everybody that was ever on there. When they do that, if you've ever been in business, we're talking about business, they have what they call downsizing, and where you implode the company, somebody bought them out. So Austin Macaulay isn't what was when I was there. But anyway, at least I got something out of the deal. And I put a little note in here to read a poem about Shelley. A friend of mine, Dr. Dan Sisko, who lives in Portland, he's a writer. Actually, you might even know him. He was on the phone with me the other day, and we were talking about the Shelleys, Mary Shelley, because there's a movie out about her. And I studied Shelley. I did graduate work on him, and he's a doctor. He doesn't really read this stuff. Like we right brain people think this is so important. I know his name. But she had after her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, died. She didn't like her stepmother at all, and Byron and Shelley were getting into the Gothic, and she was already like laying on her mother's grave at night with a candle and reading books. She wouldn't leave her mother's grave. This leads to Frankenstein, right? She would read on her mother's grave. And so Shelley, when they met, he was married to, and they were just intellectual equals. They just were, there was no way out of it, And this is to her husband, Percy B. Shelley, who is from England, from London. And this is all accurate, as they say. He has a poem called The Cloud, which they say is, if you are a meteorologist, everything in the poem is correct. Shelley was into science. So even though you're reading this poem and you think it's just a poem, he's like talking about weather barometers and all this stuff. They're a really bright crowd, that 1800 crowd, 17 smart bunch of people. Yeah, they're all really well read, So this goes to Shelley. A ghost ship sails, start over. A ghost sails a ship on the Bay of Lerici, memory of a fateful drowning. Shelley was Greek idealism, soul Italia, consumed by ecstasies, legions, a death in water, a life from fire, from boat to shore, hell untouched, lost paradise, Prometheus released. Shelley's rose bloomed litanies. He walked in this world freely, graced with Plato's light. He was Socratic treason, the heart of hearts, the cave of reason, a mystic's mirror, a comet storm. I salute his moon song, Mary and Claire. If you know who that is. That's it. Mary's sister was Claire. Yeah. This was when I wrote this. I was thinking, who might have write a song? When sometimes you ever write something, you think, I'm not qualified to really do this. You know what I mean? Like, who the hell are you to judge these people? And then I went back to it years later and went, yeah, that's all right. It's fair. I can do this. And it's about the movies. But it's also about it's more than just the movies. It's about that you don't need to act to be a great movie star, really, et cetera, et cetera. It goes like this. The movie stars are prepped and shined. The rest polished shoes for Shakespeare movie extras. Paris impersonations, burlesque shows, soap woes. Our movies have no method, no budget, never win awards. Our suits are unpressed, ink welled for failure, spun can filmed. Our acting is too good. Our stage is too real. Our songs are too sad. We jump for joy out of cue. We can't remember Homer. Pity Lolita, hate Candide. and Tristan Shandy. Tragedy, satire, and comedy are postures we unknowingly act out on the bus. Madness is the logical conclusion to a life of pain unending. All right, have a nice day. Let's see. Well, I might as well do another child poem. How many people ever had a situation in school where they thought they were misjudged or mistreated? You ever had that?
I think that's the definition of school.
Yeah. When I used to teach guitar at the community colleges, people would always say to me, you know, my fifth grade teacher like ruined my life, you know, and everybody had some huge block on, you know, they're looking at me like, please don't hurt me, you know. Music has destroyed my life, right? So I had this situation, this is hard to believe, it's different time and space, but where I was really fast. I could do everything really fast. I was one of those hyper kids. I just read everything really fast, hand it in. And usually I do it because I didn't like the idea they were making this work. So I'd get it done really fast so I could sit down and stare out the window and go, yeah, it's done, got it, you know. But I mistakenly, I'm not really good at paying attention though, like, you know. I'm kind of fragmented with the old genius, you know. And this woman was explaining, it's sort of like tying your shoes, explaining how to draw a star. And I was kind of going, yeah, right, yeah, it's a star, you know. And so I couldn't do it. And it turned into this huge, horrible thing. And this is my life in 1955, probably 56, 57. Screaming teacher, vacuum cleaner, meatloaf for dinner, American flag poorly drawn, unfair punishment, musty, dusty cattails, a milkweed trail past plum trees and cornfields, no solace, haunted driveway, streams and lookout lakes, a slice through my aging armor, goodbye once held wife, princely son. Obsidian is gathered from ancient earth. Slowly I walk by your tumbleweeds and rusty lava bones in vacuous Grand Junction. So that's when I went back to Colorado, and I had two memories going on at once there. So yeah, kind of weird. What else did I bring? I don't think I've ever read this. My friend Dennis that was publishing Breathe, he was so impressed with publishing. He's like a millionaire. He's like rich. His friends are all rich. They're these kids from Boston, make all this money. But you know, you run into people that do all these things. They want to be a musician. I used to always shock me when I used to teach. I'd go, what do you do again? Oh, I worked for aerospace. Oh my God. Do you want to play the ukulele? Okay. You're slumming. But anyway, when I was, when I'd go out to Boston, have you ever been to Boston before? Yeah. My friends are all from Natick, you know, they're all like these, you know, Irish toughs, you know, hardcore. And so everything is kind of jacked up. And when my friend Dennis was living in Oregon here, he got some guy over beers to let him be a caretaker of all this property over by Independence, Oregon. And so he became the caretaker. And so he was reliving his Irish heritage or something. He'd go out and he'd fish on this guy's property, and he just had the gift of gab. He always could. And so I went fishing with him, and gotta find this real quick here. And it's called. And my friend Mark Whalen, who was also friends with Dennis, would always get drunk and recite this poem in a very sarcastic way because he grew up with Dennis. He goes, I remember fishing with Dennis, you know, it was like a joke, you know. So the poem is called, I Remember Fishing with Dennis. And so some of it is kind of just being funny. I remember fishing with Dennis. It was when the leaves were burnt by August. The fingerling trout would tussle while we on the shore would bustle with poles we could not throw. Autumn's chill mixed its whiskey breath with the lost wisdom of summer's waltzing ghosts. Sorry. A river lay steady across the sullen Oregon fields. We walked through wild grass and berries on a path beyond his home, for he was the caretaker, trustee of the farm. Proud in our 20s, we shuffled in bouncing gait and Irish lilt. Beyond the kindred hop fields, the river lashed, wild, mean, ancient, cruel, though kind and benign in wispy whirls. Fraught, fought, and floundered was my red-haired friend from Boston. We raised hell in beer cans high, proud with gypsy fortune's revelation. Too young to believe we could ever die. We passed the sinking boat launch, roaring like lions, bold enough to answer the wind. We talked of truth and Mark Whalen, how they shared grapes from Catholic Mass, Ludlow Fair, late night drinking. All the while the river kept rolling away our lives into our favorite dreams of treasure. Slowly we waited, volatile fishermen with cigarettes, matches, and rim shots, onto the male bonding stern. Bravados turbid with mythology, breathing young and free. We gathered sailors from the sea of endless seas. And here's part two. When I went to hit in Boston on his property, anybody know where Hopkinton is? Yeah, these places, they're like Ichabod Crane kind of stuff, you know. When you go to Boston, Wiki, Spick, all of these names of these streets are hilarious. You know, it's really old America, 13 colonies, witch trial stuff. It's like crazy names. You know? So Dennis had this friend named Mike, and Mike was in Vietnam, and he was really dangerously tough, but he was very funny. And he sat up with me, and we talked about Vietnam. And he went fishing with, so all the three of us went out on a boat, and they were both hungover because I had stopped drinking. I don't drink. I stopped drinking. So they're both hungover. And I remember fishing with Dennis, number two. I remember fishing with Dennis. It was when the leaves were burnt by August. I caught 2 bass and 1 pike. I met Mad Mike. We rode the morning against the wind until we saw the danger that lay there within. Hangover, chill over, East Coast, insult, chagrin, mayhem. Film at 11. Stay tuned. Mary goes fishing. And then this is a John Wayne. Well, okay, Pilgrim. How we doing for time? Keep going. So this is a book. I was just talking to Leopoldo, any of the women that are here. A friend of Dennis's, Megan, is in this book. So she has a whole section of her book, her poems. And so maybe we could get somebody would want to read, or anybody, the women here could read Megan's poems and see what she has to say. You ever heard the term Marco Polo when kids are playing?
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know what that meant. And I was doing these Borders Books tours through Los Angeles and these places. And I'd stay at these really strange places like La Quinta and I'd be by myself, just kind of existentially like falling apart, and sitting in some lawn chair going, God, it's the end of the world, like, oh God, critical mass, And these kids are bouncing around the water yelling, Marco Polo. And I'm thinking, Marco Polo, he went to India, right? Or he went to China, right? He's the explorer, and I didn't know it was a game. I didn't know. I thought it was some profound thing. Why do they keep saying Marco Polo? And they were with their mother. There was this really stand-up mother. I mean, this mother was just like the mother everybody would want to have, And she was like, just cheering on her kids, And it goes like this. It's called San Diego. The children singing will stop the freeway, chanting, splashing, Marco Polo, Marco Polo. We're living for a killing floor, a walk through gates of sunshine. Women are champions of fleur-de-lis, deserted kindred blooms, soft eyes, soft sighs, sandy hearts and brown shoulders and blue-bleached water, soft pools of sunlit ardor, and motel flower grandeur. In the swimming pool of life, there are no refugees. It's glee time here. Adults lie around creation, maternally wed to a woman's thighs with gentle hands. Who's raised Catholic in here? Anybody? Catholic? Yeah, so when I did this poem for Mother Teresa, because I was just really moved by what she said, that she was recovering these bodies of these piles of dead babies, and that her whole goal was that she always said one of those children could have been Gandhi or something. So the Indian people were very, very in love with her because she would save these kids. And but she felt that she'd failed miserably, at the end. And anyway, and she had all this confession at the end. But this was my take on, because I'm a romantic, okay? This always happens to me, you know. I romanticize people and go, you know, look, that guy was, you know. So I'm going to keep my romanticism alive here, but I'm going to go with this for Mother Teresa, purely on her intention. She is Catholic art, guileless hope, glowing Mary, touch love Jesus, Savior Levita, consecrated in prayer for the ravaged castaways, in cold reason's alleyway, magnification for all caught in life's breath and circumstance. Death pulls its lever in the fast famine regime. It rules over licorice arms and thirsty tree limbs. But Hosanna's daughter saves them all. Tortured, they find oasis in Emmanuel's compassion. Her passion is a candle lit above the cruel skull walls. I was going to say Golgotha walls, but I'll just, Golgotha means skull. So I just wanted to say that, because every time I read it, I go, why didn't I put Golgotha there? Because I'm so afraid to write that. In glowing dawn, a smile awaits the unwashed and unwanted. In wonderment, she rescues all to be good. Though lost, they will rise again. Her last words, I love you, Jesus. What I like about some of my early poems is they're so naive. It's like you're talking about watercolor, I'm a painter too. I was just talking about a friend of mine about first takes in the studio. Don't keep doing takes, keep the first one, because you weren't being self-conscious, Always look for the one where it really was what you did. Everything else starts to become mimetic. You start imitating yourself. And but anyway, I wrote this after I was a real drinker, and I wrote this as kind of my clarion call to it's okay, I drink too much, well, F you, And this was what it was called, As Dreamers Die. As dreamers die and rainbows fall, the searing tools burn and torture, the death of a dream, the grave of our hours. Together we watch as dreamers die. The seawall crumbles and life succumbs to the savage funnel, tossing and twisting it to ruins. As dreamers die, others still tarry, falter without vision, in love with lies, and the promise of more shelter. The dreamer runs but falls to escape the inevitable blow. No one believes or hopes to climb the peak and surrender to the sun. The illusion kills. It is the blunt axe in garbage hands. The dream falls, stumbles, spat on, unloved, unrealized, and alone. We cry out, "Oh God in heaven, mercy for the ones who can't stand without trees to lean on, or prayers to cry down, or wings to fly with atop the fires of hate." As dreamers die, some hug armchairs, unusually secure, knowing in their minds they need no answers, but lie cold with reason enough to fear pictures where dreams have died. While people pause to pray something they almost felt, lying and cheating to a fortress inane, unable to taste their own blood. A sea of crosses infest the calm countryside as dreamers die side by side. So I'll do one more. Yeah, okay. Have I showed you my collection of thoughts? Okay. Okay, this is for Janie. Diane Austin, she's my significant other, and we live in a house in Portland. And she grew up in the Mission District in San Francisco. And she has this inevitable ability to attract the most amazing people on the planet whenever you go any place with her. She knows everybody. You wouldn't even, I'm not even get into it, but she had this cat named Roy, who was from he was from Brooklyn when she lived in New York, and he was thrown from a tenement slum 7 stories up, and he survived, this kitten. And she named him Roy after Roy Orbison. And he would walk like he was from Brooklyn. Cats are, He'd go like this across the floor like this. He had this Brooklyn walk, And her joke with people whenever they would meet Roy was, "Oh, you thought Roy was just a cat." No. So this is kind of me talking about her. It's called She Talks to Cats. She talks to cats, they speak back. No, this one is lonely, she says convincingly. She almost did comedy on SNL, funnier than anyone I've ever met. Hung out with Jesse Dillon in New York. Waited for him as he talked to his dad on the payphone. sat with Carol Burnett in Tribeca and talked about her cat carriers. Jane the Quipster, genius from the mission, best cook in Southeast Portland, soul of 60s consciousness, does not suffer fools or cruelty. The lady of my life, Saint Janie. I was 19, she was 17 in 1970. It's 2022, almost three years. Each day now is a construct of our past. We live with two cool cats, used to have coyotes. Can't go back. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Leopoldo. Thank you very much. I cannot imagine a better venue for a poetry reading than this one. I mean, what a garden of delight this is. I mean, come on.
We'll keep that in.
Yeah. You know, and on top of that, we have poetry. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to take you to three different worlds. One is the world of my childhood, the 50s and the 60s. We used to go to a distant village in Poland to my distant relatives for vacation because my my father worked had a private business. He was a watchmaker, and we couldn't go to any of the camps, state-supported camps, or colonies. So we had the village, and I, 45 or 60 years later, I write a collection of poems from that, memories from that area, and the name of the book is Podlesie. That's the name of the village, which means near the forest. So it was close to the forest, and siada jagna na trzynożnym stołku, obownym pachołku. Doi jagna krowy o wschodzie, zachodzie, dojna krowa nie bodzie. Czasami się zdarzy, machnie ogonem po twarzy. Wymiona nabrzmiałe do bólu, a mleko białe. Oprze się jagna ręką o krowę, oprze jej głowę. And you may be wondering what I just read. It could be anything. Jagna, it's a diminutive for Agnes, Jagna. Jagna sits on a wooden stool, 3 legs as a rule. She milks the cows, her sunrise chore, milk cows don't gore. Sometimes, though, as she sits with her pail, she gets hit with the tail. Cow udders are big, utterly swollen, so milk will flow. Jagna will rest, it needs to be said, her hand, then her head. I don't know if you've ever observed something absolutely unique that in Polish it's called sejmik bociani. Storks. America is void of storks, but storks are all over Africa, Europe, and Europe mostly. Those are the white and black birds with red beaks and red legs, long legs. And in August, before they fly away to Africa, they congregate, and you can see a flock of 200 or 300 storks, and they will walk around. And it said Sejmik means a parliament, so they are debating, who is flying and how to fly. And I witnessed such a thing, and I tied this poem to my uncle, who was tied to his farm and couldn't fly anywhere. Storks on a field, non-allied to the big debate. Around they walk, wings in plural, like a mural. Jan sees the storks, his hands spread out, showing his doubts. How can those hands attached to earth measure wind's worth? Jan's silly thoughts tangle his hair. He's not flying anywhere. Things were tough back then in Poland, and the quotas were so high that farmers could not fulfill the quota, and they were falling behind with payments, and so the taxes were absolutely unbelievable. So to deal with the situation, my uncle and his sister, his name is Jan, they cut down the ancient forest. Jan and his sister cut all their trees off at the knees. 200 pines brought down with axes to pay off taxes. The trees that were guards for a long, long time, now victims of crime. Jagna is sobbing. Jan also is sobbing, murder and throbbing. She saw the saw fells the trees. She is not toothless. She laughs and is ruthless. The fallen pine lie on barren sod. How is it possible, God? If you've been back then to those villages, you might have witnessed a scene like this. The storm is coming, and people would put pictures of the saints in the windows and then close the shutters, and they would go down on their knees and pray for hours. The storm is coming, attacking our village, ready to pillage. Run, hide, shutters tight, a candle flame toward of flight, toward of fright, a blessed light. Saint Anthony, we can't forget, keeps the house from getting wet. Lady Mary, for holy, pure, protects our windows, that's for sure. Saint Joseph, our forever shelter, guard us from the helter-skelter. This storm now breaks and takes its pillage further to another village. So the few poems of my childhood, that's one world, wasn't imaginary in any way. Well, maybe it was. And I have two other worlds that I'd like to invite you to, that I created. Few poems come from, Leopoldo mentioned children poems, and I'm writing something else too, in addition to This Porcupine Is Mine. One collection of poems is titled King George and His Court. And so when Queen Elizabeth II sails from the New York harbor back to Europe, I'd be ready with these poems. Be ready for England. Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria was very tall, so she was so tall she could forestall anyone beating her to the punch, be it a drink or royal lunch. Queen Victoria wasn't meager. She had what's called a full figure that could block the sun and the moon from the highlands to Saskatoon. Her left foot was bigger than most. Hence, the Queen called it foremost. The most foremost foot in the world, a sight one should truly behold. A sight to be behold, not missed. 'Twas Queen Victoria's pride and jest, her raison d'être, her essence, though the foot was not effervescent. It wasn't bubbly or fizzy, though it made her servants dizzy when the queen laughed herself silly from Windsor to Piccadilly. Queen Victoria's chin.
Oh, great.
Queen Victoria's stately chin was envied by her every kin. Admired by many and few, she graced the garden of Kew. It was nesting where it belonged, slightly protruding, proudly snugged right under Her Majesty's nose, striking a commanding pose. It was a chin to be trusted. Twice a day the chin was dusted. Good or bad, it never spoke ill, unless it suffered a spill. A blast of emotions, a blot, a splash where there should be not. A large blob of vichyssoise sauce. No wonder the queen got cross. No wonder she got enraged. She felt attacked, upstaged, a blemish on her royal chin, banished the royal grin. Prince George is one of the Queen Victoria's offsprings and also King George. So Prince George, if you think that being firstborn is such a treat and then you become a queen and all that spiel that follows, think again. Prince George was King George's firstborn. Thus, he could not avoid the throne. He could not avoid ascending, with his ascending impending. With his ascending impending, Prince George would not dream offending King George with the slightest hint. He didn't fancy being a king. Didn't fancy ascending the throne on account of being firstborn, on account that sealed his fate. Oh, why wasn't I born a bit late? Why wasn't I born as second? For being second, he reckoned, would put on hold his ascending so it wouldn't be so impending. Take Prince Stephen, Crane or Swan. You think they are having fun? Their high hopes are all in vain. They will never ascend to reign. They would all love the ascending without as much as pretending that Prince George was the firstborn. Why wouldn't they ascend the throne? Prince George was King George's firstborn. Thus he could not avoid the throne. He could not avoid ascending with his ascending impending. And the last poem from that world is Prince Frog. Everybody knows the story, and yet I don't think I'm putting a new twist on it, but I'm giving it a little bit of an oomph, if you will. Prince Frog was doomed and forlorn, for the plot was written in stone. His chances to turn a prince's head was much worse than pretty bad. His chance to be found on the ground had to be less than profound, not to mention the famous kiss, which, at best, would be a miss. Yet against these staggering odds, Prince Frog dreamed with other frogs that he would leave his little pond, for it's not where a prince belongs. For the sake of this fairy tale, without any further delay, let's give Prince Frog a chance to shine, for we know a kiss is divine. Thus, Prince Frog was saved by a kiss. Given a chance, he took his miss and lived to tell this little tale, Prince Frog from a fairy tale. And another imaginary world is that of my musical poems, whimsical, sometimes funny, sometimes not. I hope you're going to have a good laugh and enjoy some of the new concepts that I present in these poems. They are very much personified, as you will realize right away. Miss Clarinet. She was a weaver of sound, scintillating, yet soft and so profound that her voice could spin a sonatina for which she would be offered subpoenaed. She'd be a subject of persecution, much locomotion and diminution, all this because of her heavenly voice that would leave others no other choice but to conspire, intrigue, and destroy, to which end they would tirelessly employ all their talents, prowess, and cunning, that the result would be unbecoming. Unbecoming, disgraceful, and tragic, for Miss Clarinet could lose her magic. Her marvelous voice, one beyond compare, could be robbed of his sparkle and flair. But Miss Clarinet would pay no heed to the chicaneries and plots. Indeed, she got lost in a Mozart concerto and sing away con divertimento. Miss Scherzo. She was a joke and nothing but. Hilarious sprite that kicked all but, not always heard or realized, made explicit or otherwise. Miss Scherzo wouldn't be compromised, relax one's hand or heed wise advice. Indeed, she jumped in like a jest, thus giving minuet a rest. She lived in one's mind and wrists, sonata's third movement, a gist of symphony and string quartet, a tickler, a playful vignette. Though she tripled the meter as such, she was a jape, elusive as much she'd ever been confined in a yoke, for she was nothing but a joke. Miss Lut. She was finicky and unconditioned, refused to play without air condition, would throw a tantrum each day to Sunday, just like the late Solomon Grundy. She fell in love with a vagabond, a tall chap in blonde, strong hands with a touch of irony, price to pay for being iconic. The stronger his touch grew, his caress, the stronger she would become possessed by what could have never transpired if the price had not been love or fire. Being consumed by immortal flame, Lutz's long strings of hair began to rain, began to shower the happy tears of her desires and unsung fears. Was she singing for him or the art, a demanding muse without a heart? Or was she singing for a duo, a perfect basso continuo? And now we have Miss Banjo. Back in Connecticut, we once went to a grass. I mean, if you live in the Midwest, now and then you end up going to a grass, bluegrass festival and music and whatnot, and there's a picnic and there's barbecue. And once we ventured up on such an event in Connecticut, and guess who was there? Pete Seeger. Yeah. So I wrote a poem about it. Miss Banjo. Miss Benja could not be restrained. She'd be playing the same refrain until the blue grass stopped growing, which was equally annoying. Subdividing measures at will, she'd get under anyone's skin, though her drones were quicker than quick. They would be dismissed with a smirk. She could be finicky and remote, could finger pick a single note or claw hammer 4 notes at once until bluegrass grew back and danced. Full of daydreams and reveries, Miss Banjo brought James Joyce to tears. He left behind the Irish lore for Trieste and bel canto amor. She fell in love with Pete Seeger. He, tall and lanky, but eager. She was round with a graceful neck. They embraced and never looked back. This is one of the most imaginary poems I think I've written. It's Mr. F. I mean, such a formation doesn't exist, though. Mr. F was nobody's fool, but he was struck according to rules between a stubborn key of E and a fugue in the key of G. He liked hanging out on a clef, though he wouldn't give an F about much, including hanging, for hanging could be quite stranding. As if hanging would linger, Mr. F knew of a finger in the key of F that's so sharp that's best used to be used on a harp. He was mostly a major leaguer. When combusted and beleaguered, he would go off at any time, turning the scale into a crime scene on the cloud, into a crime scene on the clef in F major, cloud 9 or neuf. A Brahms Symphony number 3 in a shattering key of D. And I have one tiny poem that I hope I'm going to find, and that would be for Leopoldo, who, if you remember, started out with making a remark about this. I love coffee. I order Americano whenever I can. This doesn't make me American. It's just as close as I can come. So that was the little poem. Thank you very much. It's a great sport. Thank you, Leopoldo.
Thank you. And the title is Thank You. You're welcome. Small children are taught these words, 2 words, thank you. I am grateful for you. 2 words, you're welcome. I receive your gratefulness. You are always welcome here. We learn the mannerisms of polite society, basic etiquette, the elements of civility, the placid face of calming waters. Later, we learn their deeper meaning. Far below the surface of harmonious light dwells massive well springs of gratefulness. We are always welcomed here. The oceans move forward, giving rise to tides. All sinking boats are lifted upwards. Continuous waves surge toward the shore. Though we struggle, the wind is finally at our back. We hurl along the crest with hands clasped, a blessed journey to the stars and each other.